Imagine cold iron bites your ankle. Imagine the chain jerks every time the man beside you shifts in his sleep. You see torchlight smear across stone as a guard passes, bored and cruel. You feel the bruise under your ribs throb with each breath. The door at the end of the corridor stays shut until tonight, it doesn't. You are inside the gladiator school at Capua, and your life is measured in rations, bruises, and the angle of a master's smile when he chooses who fights next. You smell old sweat soaked into straw. You taste yesterday's thin porridge, still sour in the back of your throat. You hear training in the yard, wooden swords cracking, men grunting, a whip snapping to keep rhythm. But the sound that matters now is quieter, whispering that moves like a rat through the sleeping rows. A head lifts. Eyes find eyes. No speeches. No banners. Only a question that sits behind every stare. Do you die for Rome's entertainment, or do you die reaching for air? You feel the chain at your ankle like a verdict. But the chain also becomes a promise. If it breaks, everything changes. A guard's steps fade. A lock clicks somewhere. Someone has a tool, maybe stolen, maybe made from scrap, maybe gifted by desperation itself. The iron gives a small, ugly squeal. You flinch, waiting for shouts. But nothing happens. Therefore the work continues. Another link loosens. Another man's ankle slips free. The sound of iron releasing flesh is the sweetest sound your life contains. You rise without ceremony, bare feet on cold stone. A line of bodies, half shadow, half hunger. The door is not a door now, it is a throat, and the school swallows men every day. Tonight you try to climb out of the throat. Someone signals toward the kitchens. Not the armory, not the yard, the kitchens. Because knives live there. Fire lives there. Hot grease lives there. And a hungry man understands heat as a weapon. You move. The corridor narrows. You hear a cough, too loud. A man clamps a hand over his mouth. You smell stew residue and sour wine as you slip past storerooms. The school feels alive, like it can sense disobedience through its stones. But the stones stay silent. Therefore you reach the kitchen doorway. Inside, the world changes from damp to hot. You see hanging cuts of meat, bread loaves stacked like bricks, clay jars, iron pots blackened by 1,000 meals you never enjoy. You see cleavers on a block. Your hands reach before your mind finishes deciding. Fingers close around would slick with old fat. A cleaver is heavier than it looks. It pulls your wrist down with brutal honesty. But it also fits your palm like destiny. Others grab what they can. Spits become spears. Rolling pins become clubs. A basket of onions becomes missiles. Someone shoves a pot off the fire, grease splashes, hissing. The smell hits like a slap. A man dips cloth in oil without thinking, because instinct replaces plan. You are not soldiers. You are caged men discovering teeth. Footsteps slam outside. A guard lunges into the doorway, helmet askew, eyes wide with the shock of prey turning. He opens his mouth to shout, but the shout never becomes a warning. Someone swings a pan into his face. You see teeth flash, then blood. He staggers. Therefore you crash forward, shoulder into his chest, driving him into the wall. Stone meets spine. He wheezes. His keys jangle at his belt like tiny bells announcing freedom. Your hand snatches them. The guard's fingers scrabble for a dagger. You feel the moment stretch. If he draws it, someone dies. Therefore you slam the cleaver handle into his wrist. Bone pops. He screams. The scream is loud now, too loud. But it is too late to be quiet. The school wakes like a kicked hornet nest. Shouts rise. Dogs bark. Somewhere a bell begins to ring, fast, panicked. But you already have keys. Therefore locks become meaningless. You run to the chain points, hands shaking, keys scraping, metal refusing, then yielding. Each click is a man reborn. The corridor floods with bodies. Not just a few, dozens, maybe more. Maybe 168, maybe fewer. You only know how many you can see breathing. Some are scarred giants, some are skinny like broken tools. But every face shares the same expression, the sudden terror of having a choice. The first formation is not neat. Men collide. Someone falls and gets hauled up. You smell fear, sharp, sour, unavoidable. You hear your own breath rasp. Ahead, torchlight dances. Guards gather at the yard entrance, confused by the speed of the storm. They expect a riot, but riots beg for mercy. This rush does not. You burst into the open. Night air hits your sweat and turns it cold. But the cold is clean. You see the yard where you bleed for practice, now littered with dropped training swords and overturned benches. You see the gate. Beyond it, road and darkness and Italy, the world that owns you. Guards slam into you like waves. A spear tip scratches your shoulder. A club cracks someone's skull nearby with a sound like splitting fruit. You swing the cleaver and feel it bite into something that resists, then gives. The sensation is sickening and liberating at the same time. Your stomach flips, but your arm keeps moving. Therefore, the guard stumbles back, clutching red. The gate is still shut. Someone rams it with a bench. With splinters. Iron hinges scream. Dogs surge in, foaming, trained to hunt men like you. A dog launches at your thigh. You feel teeth pierce skin. Pain spikes white. Therefore, you grab its throat with both hands and slam it down until it stops moving. There is no room for pity. More bodies pile at the gate. Someone finds the bar. It lifts. The gate yawns open like a mouth. Therefore, you run through. Behind you, the school erupts with pursuit, shouting, running, clattering armor. Ahead, the road stretches into black, and the certainty that Rome hunts you like an escaped fire. You sprint. Bare feet slap dirt. Someone stumbles, but keeps going. You look over your shoulder and see torches bouncing like angry stars. You hear the bells still ringing, insisting to the night that property is missing. But the night does not answer. Therefore, the only answer is speed. The first field you cross is planted, vines, low and tangled. You trip over roots. Your cleaver swings at your side, suddenly too heavy. You feel blood run down your thigh where the dog bites. But stopping means chains. Therefore, you limp run, teeth clenched, breath burning. Somewhere ahead, a voice hisses one word, half prayer, half plan, Vesuvius. You know that mountain. Everyone knows that mountain. It sits like a god that never speaks. Its slopes are rough, its paths narrow, its height a shield against cavalry. But it is also a trap if the wrong men surround it. You don't know if the sprint begins a rebellion or a larger cage. You only know the road is open and the school is behind. Therefore, you follow the pull of that single word into the dark. Dawn threatens the horizon. Not a pretty dawn, an enemy dawn, revealing you. You feel your stomach twist, empty and angry. The first trial is not battle. It is hunger. You chew grain meant for animals. It scratches your tongue. You swallow anyway. You pull weeds from the edge of a path and cram them into your mouth. Bitter. But bitter is still life. Therefore, hands keep grabbing whatever grain exists. A farmhouse appears. Smoke rises. You smell bread. It hits you so hard it feels like pain. But no one invites a slave army in for breakfast. Therefore, you approach with weapons visible, hearts pounding, and you see the farmer's eyes widen. He reaches for a door bar. You step closer. He freezes. The bargain happens without words. Food comes out, trembling hands. You take it. He stays alive. That is mercy in this new language. You move again before Rome's riders appear. Because Rome always appears. But it appears first in small shapes, scouts, local guards, men who think a whip solves everything. They carry confidence like perfume. You smell their arrogance before you see them. A small detachment blocks a road bend. Shiny helmets. Fresh shields. They shout orders as if your body still belongs to their voice. But the shout hits a wall inside you. Therefore, your legs do not stop. Someone beside you throws a stone. It cracks a helmet. The soldier stumbles, stunned by the idea of being hurt by property. That hesitation costs him. Therefore, bodies crash forward, and you feel a spear graze past your ribs. You swing low hard. A shield jerks away. A man falls. The fight is chaotic. There is no line, no trumpet call. Only lunges, screams, quick deaths. You smell blood mixing with dust. You hear a man laugh. Not joy, but disbelief, like his mind cannot hold what his hands do. But the soldiers break. Therefore, their discipline melts into running, and you snatch real weapons from their hands. Iron swords, actual spears, shields with Rome's marks. Now the group changes. You feel it. Not just escaped men, armed men. Rome sends small forces first, because Rome believes you are a riot with legs. But every victory grows teeth. Therefore, each skirmish feeds the next. Vesuvius rises closer. The climb begins. Paths narrow. Rocks cut feet. You feel your calf cramp. But the mountain offers something the flat land never offers. Angles Rome cannot easily dominate. Therefore you drag yourself upward, breath-tearing, eyes fixed on higher ground. The camp forms near the mountain's rough folds. Fires start, small, hidden, desperate. Smoke curls. Someone tries to keep it low. But hunger forces heat. Therefore the smell of cooking roots drifts, and you fear that smell more than you enjoy it, because smell travels farther than whispers. Scouts return, breathless. Roman soldiers move to block the obvious path down. You picture the trap, a single exit, spears waiting, starvation above. The trap feels complete. But then eyes turn to the cliff face, steep, ugly, dismissed. Therefore a new kind of plan grows. If Rome believes no human can descend, then descend there. Night arrives like a blade. You feel cold on sweat. Hands search for vines, rope vines, thick and stubborn. They smell green and raw. You twist them, braid them, knot them with fingers that tremble from fatigue. But the knots hold. Therefore hope takes shape as a rough rope that cuts into your palms. You crawl to the edge. The drop steals breath. You look down and see darkness swallowing the cliff base. One slip means death without a tomb, bones lost to the mountain. You don't know if the vine rope holds. You don't know if Romans somehow watch. But staying means starvation. Therefore you go over the edge. You descend. Your hands burn. The vine bites skin. You feel your muscles shake as if they argue with gravity. Small stones break loose and vanish into black. You hear them hit far below, a delayed rattle like distant teeth. But the line behind keeps moving. Therefore you keep moving. Halfway down, a man above loses footing. You hear his gasp. You feel the rope jerk as panic travels through it. For a heartbeat, the whole line threatens to rip loose. You dig fingers into the vine until nails tear. Pain blooms. But the rope holds. Therefore the man steadies, sobbing silently, and the descent continues. Feet touch ground at last. Knees buckle. You taste bile. But there is no rest. Above, more bodies descend. Ahead, the Roman camp sits unaware, fires flickering, men joking, armor stacked neatly as if war is a schedule. Therefore you creep toward them like a sickness. You hit the camp like a nightmare with a heartbeat. A tent wall splits under a blade. A man rolls out half asleep, eyes searching for a dream that becomes steel. He raises a hand. Too late. Therefore he collapses. Fire catches. A torch falls into straw. Flames jump fast. Smoke explodes. Romans stumble out, coughing, grabbing shields without formation. But formation is their strength, and you deny them time to build it. Therefore you rush them in their confusion, screaming, swinging, stabbing. The sound is not heroic. It is cloth tearing, throats choking, men begging in languages that don't matter. You smell burned hair. You feel heat on your face. But you also feel something else, Rome's certainty cracking. Therefore the camp collapses into panic, and the blocked path is suddenly meaningless. Victory tastes like ash, because victory invites hunger of another kind, more people. Escaped farmhands appear first, then miners, then debtors with hollow eyes, then herders with knives. They come like water to a break in a dam. You see their faces, not trained killers, just desperate bodies. But they bring stories of cruelty that match your own. Therefore they cling to this moving spark as if it is a new sun. The camp becomes a moving city. Fires. Children sometimes, clinging to a parent's leg. Old men limping. Women carrying bundles. Every mouth is a countdown. Food disappears faster than it arrives. But the group grows anyway. Therefore the leadership, whoever stands closest to the center, must choose, raid, move, fight, flee. Discipline strains. A man argues over a stolen wine jug. Another threatens him with a spear. You feel the edge of collapse. Freedom does not automatically create order. But Rome approaches, and Rome loves disorder. Therefore someone breaks the fight, shoving both men apart, because internal bloodshed is a gift to the enemy. Scouts return with conflicting reports. One says a commander rides with heavy infantry. Another swears two armies march from different roads. Another claims allies gather in the north. You can't fact-check. You can only choose a direction. But direction becomes destiny. Therefore the debate burns. North to the Alps, where mountains might mean escape, or south into the wealthy throat of Italy, where food and loot wait but Rome's heart beats. You feel Rome still inside your skin. Even free today, a reflex makes you flinch at sharp voices. A habit makes you look for permission before stepping into a house. You hate that habit, but it exists. Therefore, freedom feels like a raw wound, not a clean gift. The decision becomes motion. The mass moves and the land pays. Fields strip bare. Storehouses empty. Some towns shut gates. But gates break under enough hands. Therefore, each day brings more supplies and more hatred, because every raid writes a new enemy into memory. Rome stops laughing. The forces sent now look different, harder faces, better armor, standards held like threats. Skirmishes turn into battles that last longer than a heartbeat. You stand behind a stolen shield and feel its weight bite into your forearm. 20 pounds of wood and leather becomes a wall between your ribs and Rome's point. But walls crack. Therefore you learn quickly. Block, shove, stab, breathe, repeat. In the press of bodies, you smell onions on someone's breath, smell sweat and iron and fear. You hear a Roman officer shout to close ranks. That phrase, close ranks, changes everything because Rome becomes a single animal. But your side is many animals. Therefore, the only answer is to hit where the ranks are weak, where a line breaks near a ditch, where a shield edge lifts. You survive by inches. A spear slides past your ear. You feel its wind. You slash at the arm that holds it. A Roman grunts, shocked. But shock fades fast. Therefore, another Roman lunges to replace him. The fight feels endless, like the earth itself demands blood for every step. Rumors race through camp faster than commands. Some say escape is possible if the north is reached. Others say Rome blocks the passes. You don't know. You only see the next hill, the next raid, the next clash. But uncertainty is its own weapon. Therefore men argue at night, voices rising, fists tightening around cups, because a divided camp bleeds without the enemy lifting a sword. A new Roman arrives with a colder kind of confidence. The name passes mouth to mouth like a curse. Marcus Licinius Crassus. The air changes when that name is spoken. Not because it sounds magical, but because it sounds deliberate. This enemy does not chase like a policeman. This enemy hunts like a mathematician. Therefore, every move begins to feel counted, anticipated, boxed in. The Roman pressure tightens. Roads that once lay open now bristle with patrols. Supply lines become ambushes. A foraging party fails to return. You wait, staring into trees, listening for footsteps that never come. But waiting becomes a knife in the mind. Therefore, someone pushes to move again, even without a clear plan, because stillness feels like surrender. Then the unthinkable appears, a wall. Not a city wall, not a fort. A wound cut across the land, ditch, rampart, palisade. It stretches, ugly and practical. You stand in mud with thousands behind you and Rome in front of you, and the earth itself becomes a weapon. But a wall is not just wood. It is a sentence. Therefore your throat tightens, because the world suddenly shrinks. You walk near the ditch. The slope is steep. Stakes glare upward. You toss a stone. It tumbles down and disappears. You imagine bodies falling there. You feel the crowd behind you shift, restless, like cattle sensing slaughter. But a wall also invites a question. Can it be broken? Therefore men test it at night, probing, cutting, filling the ditch with brush, searching for thin points. Rome responds instantly. Horns blare. Arrows whistle from towers. You duck and feel one bury into the ground near your foot, vibrating. Panic surges. But panic wastes energy. Therefore someone shouts to pull back, and the mass retreats, dragging wounded men, leaving blood on the dirt like a trail. Food runs out. The new mouths that once feel like strength now feel like anchors. You watch a man boil a leather strap in a pot, hoping for grease. The smell is terrible, like old animal and despair. But he eats it anyway. Therefore you understand hunger is not discomfort. Hunger is command. Discipline cracks. People argue, run north, run south, fight, surrender. You hear surrender spoken aloud, and the word makes bile rise. Because surrender means chains, and chains mean the arena, and the arena means dying while strangers cheer. But death outside the arena is still death. Therefore the mind spins, unable to find a clean door out. A desperate plan forms, escape by sea. Pirates promise ships. You march toward the coast with hope like a fever. You smell salt before you see water. The sea wind smells like possibility. But possibility is fragile. Therefore you gather payment, loot, coin, anything, and hand it over with hands that don't fully trust. Days pass. You stare at the horizon. You squint into glare. You watch gulls circle. You wait for sails. But the pirates vanish like a bad dream. Empty water answers your hunger. Therefore rage erupts, shouting, threats, sobbing, because betrayal feels like Rome wearing a different mask. Now the ordeal becomes immediate. Rome presses. The wall behind still exists in memory even if you stand miles away. You feel hunted in every tree line. You hear distant horns and wonder if they are real or only fear making music. But fear still moves feet. Therefore the camp breaks into smaller groups, then tries to pull together again, like a body trying to clot a wound. Winter bites. Not poetic winter, knife winter. You feel fingers stiffen around a weapon. You see breath puff white. But cold is manageable compared to exhaustion. Therefore you march anyway, because stopping is capture. The decisive battle approaches without permission. One morning, scouts return sprinting, eyes wild. Roman lines appear over a rise, orderly, wide, relentless. You hear the disciplined thunder of many feet. You smell leather and oil on their gear, carried on air. But smell does not stop steel. Therefore the camp scrambles, some grabbing weapons, some praying, some running, some freezing. You grip a stolen blade too long. Your hand cramps. The hilt rubs a blister raw. You feel blood mix with sweat on your palm, making the grip slippery. But letting go is death. Therefore you wrap cloth around it, tighter, cutting circulation, choosing numbness over dropping the sword. The Roman line advances, shields locked, iron singing. The sound of thousands of shield rims clicking together is like a giant jaw closing. You are not watching history. You are inside it. Your throat burns from yelling. Your lungs ache. But the body keeps shouting because silence feels like surrender. Therefore your voice joins the roar, even if it cracks. The collision happens. You crash into the legionary wall. The sound is wood and bone and air leaving lungs. You feel your shoulders slam into a shield and bounce back as if hitting a tree. But the men behind push and momentum becomes weapon. Therefore you shove again, blades searching for gaps. A Roman tries to stab under your ribs. You see the point flash. You twist, and the tip scrapes armor or leather or bone too close. You feel heat in your side where it scratches. But pain is a message you cannot afford to read right now. Therefore you hook your shield rim under his and wrench upward. His guard opens. Your blade drives forward. Something gives. You slip in gore. Your foot slides. The ground is no longer dirt, it is a paste of blood and mud. You catch yourself on a shield rim, fingers squeezing so hard joints scream. But falling here means boots and blades finish the job. Therefore you yank yourself upright, heart hammering like it wants out. The fog of war swallows certainty. You can't see the leader. You only hear rumors, he's here, he's wounded, he's breaking through, he's dead. Every rumor changes how men fight. But rumors are cheap. Therefore you focus on the only truth available. The shield in front, the spear to the left, the opening that appears for half a second. A comrade, someone whose name you learn only yesterday, takes a hit and drops. He reaches up, fingers closing on air. You want to stop. But stopping creates another gap and another death. Therefore you step over him, and shame stings worse than blood. The Roman discipline grinds forward. When one falls, another steps into the space instantly, like water filling a crack. You slash and find only shield wood. You thrust and hit iron. You feel your arm go numb from impact. But the line does not break. Therefore desperation rises, and men scream for a breakthrough that may not exist. Somewhere to the right, a pocket opens, Romans shoved back, a momentary ripple. You don't know if it becomes escape or bait. But standing still guarantees capture. Therefore you surge toward it with others, bodies pressing, blades lifted, eyes wide. Arrows fall. You hear the hiss. One strikes a man's neck, blood sprays hot. He gurgles, eyes shocked, and collapses. But the surge continues, because momentum becomes the only plan. Therefore you push through smoke and dust and screams that blur into one long note. Your throat tastes copper. Maybe your own blood. Maybe someone else's. You can't tell. You only know each breath feels thicker, but breathing must happen. Therefore, you gasp through clenched teeth and keep moving, one step at a time, because the real question is simple and brutal. Do you keep moving forward when your body begs you to stop? The battle breaks into fragments. Small knots of fighting. Men fleeing. Men chasing. You don't know where the main line is anymore. You don't know if an opening to the hills exists. But the Roman net tightens. Therefore, every direction feels wrong. A Roman helmet appears inches away. The eyes behind it are not monstrous. They are human, tired, determined, afraid. That makes it worse, because it means this slaughter is not a myth. It is a choice repeated by thousands. But sympathy does not block a sword. Therefore, you swing first. The Roman drops. You stagger. You feel your legs tremble from lactic burn. You look for familiar faces and find fewer. You hear fewer voices answering your shouts. But the mind refuses to accept the count. Therefore, you keep searching, scanning, stumbling, killing, surviving, until survival itself feels like accident. Silence arrives in pieces. Not all at once. First fewer screams. Then fewer footsteps. Then only flies staring to land. You stand and realize your hands still grip the weapon. Fingers are cramped in a claw. You try to loosen them and pain shoots up your forearm. But pain is proof of living. Therefore you breathe, ragged, staring at ground that looks black and red. You look around at the cost. Friends you named yesterday are gone today. Bodies lie in unnatural angles. A shield sits upright in mud like a gravestone. The rebellion that feels like a new calendar page, clean, unwritten, now smears into the earth. But the mind still searches for meaning. Therefore you stare at the horizon, expecting something, reinforcements, miracles, forgiveness, anything. Rome delivers its verdict on the road. You see it as you move, captured or fleeing, half alive. Crosses rise like mile markers, stretching into distance. The message is not only death. It is ownership reasserted in public. You smell rot. You hear buzzing. You see faces locked in last terror. But the worst part is the regularity. This is not rage. This is policy. Therefore, every step along that road teaches the same lesson. The empire writes its law into bodies, so no one forgets who commands. Time pulls forward, dragging you out of the mud and into the present without asking permission. The evidence stays warm. The chain link still sits on the desk, heavy real, refusing to become just a story. You feel its weight in the mind the way iron once weighs on the ankle. But the chain now looks different. Therefore, a question forms that does not belong to one century alone. Empires don't only use chains. They use systems, debt that never ends, law that feels neutral until it crushes, surveillance that replaces walls, shame that keeps a person small without any guard lifting a whip. You see the pattern because the pattern repeats in new clothing. But repetition does not mean inevitability. Therefore, the Spartacus question survives every age. When the world calls you a number, what does it take to say, out loud, inside your own ribs, I choose? The verdict is simple. Freedom costs blood and power counts on exhaustion. You feel that truth like a bruise that never fully fades. But the mirror turns toward today, toward any life lived under pressure, toward any person told to accept a place and stay there. Therefore, the legacy is not a statue or a speech. It is a decision that arrives in private moments, when no crowd cheers and no history book watches. Imagine standing again at that first locked door in Capua. Imagine hearing the keys jingle. You see the corridor ahead, dark, narrow, full of risk. You feel the chain loosen. But the real chain is inside, the habit of obedience, the fear of punishment, the belief that nothing changes. Therefore, the final question remains, ungoogleable and sharp. When the lock finally clicks in your own life, do you step through, knowing the road may end in crosses, or do you stay inside because the cage feels familiar?